welcome. My name is Alesh, and today I would like to talk to you about an event in US history that very few people know about. But before I begin, I have prepared 4 questions for you. Question number 1. What is the name of this famous ship?
Titanic.
Yes, exactly, that's the Titanic. We all know her story, we have all seen the movie, and we all know who Leonardo DiCaprio is. Question number 2. What is the name of this ship?
Queen Mary.
No, that's not Queen Mary. Don't worry if you don't know her name, because I didn't know her name either until I saw a documentary on the Czech public television, which was about this ship, which is called Eastland. It is the Eastland, and she is going to be the star of my today's presentation. Question number 3. What is the name of this famous city in US?
Chicago.
Exactly, the Windy City, which is beautifully nestled on the banks of Lake Michigan. And the last question, who is this famous person?
Oprah Winfrey.
Exactly, that is Oprah Winfrey in her skinny years. So, how do all these come together? Well, they have a mutual sad friend, which is the Eastland disaster. And that is what I'm going to be talking about today. The day was July 24th, 1915. Imagine that you are a Western Electric worker, you work in a factory, you are most likely a Polish or Czech immigrant living in Chicago. The highlight of your social life is the annual picnic that the Western Electric organizes for its employees. What did they do that year? In 1915, Western Electric rented out 3 ships to take all its employees from downtown Chicago to the southern part of Lake Michigan so that all the employees can enjoy a picnic. So what do? You get up early in the morning, you dress up, you grab your wife and kids, and you head toward downtown Chicago. The ship was docked between LaSalle, Clark, and West Wecker Drive streets on the Chicago River, which is only 20 feet deep, and that is very important. It's only 20 feet deep at that point. So you get there around 6:30, they will let you board the ship. You are in a festive mood, you're running around, you're trying to find your friends, you're talking to your co-workers. If you're chilly, you can go down to the ballroom and dance because the band was already playing. At 7:10 in the morning, the maximum capacity of 2,572 passengers was reached. And what happened at 7:28, and that's what not that many people know, the ship sunk. Unfortunately, the Eastland was built for speed, so the bottom of the ship was very narrow and the top was very wide. In order to follow the 1914 Federal Act, Seamen's Act, they retrofitted the ship with lifeboats. It was following the Titanic disaster, which added more weight to the top-heavy ship. So when you factor that in, more new lifeboats, 2,572 passengers moving back and forth, and you have a recipe for disaster. And that's exactly what happened. When I was doing my research for this presentation, I came up on an article from Chicago Tribune, and one of the witnesses in this article described the scene as a whale going for a nap. It happened all very quickly. It was very silent, but very quick. And the result of that disaster is that 844 people lost their lives that day. 844. According to the Eastland Disaster Society, which is an organization that still exists in Chicago, 472 of those victims were women, 290 were children, and 82 were men. 22 complete families perished that day. 22. So July 24th, 1915 was not a very good day. In that documentary that I was referring to earlier, they called it the Czech Titanic. Why? Well, because 220 victims of that tragedy were Czechs. Not that many people know about it. And why was the number so high? Because unlike in Titanic, where they have relatively long time for evacuation, but they did not have enough lifeboats, this was the exact opposite. They had enough lifeboats, which played their role in the disaster, But it happened so quickly that they did not have any time for evacuation. So how does Oprah Winfrey fall into this story? Because of the sheer size of the disaster and the high number of victims of that tragic event, there were so many bodies they didn't know what to do with them. So they started transporting them into the nearby warehouses. And one of those warehouses had been transformed into Harpo Studios, which later was being used to shoot the Oprah Winfrey show. And rumor has it that some of the employees believe that the studios are haunted by the souls of the victims of the Eastland disaster. What happened to the ship afterwards? They fixed her, they put some guns on her, and she served in the Navy for following 40 years. I personally visited that site of the disaster roughly 3 weeks ago when I was in Chicago. The only thing that will lead you towards the events of what happened, an explanation to what happened, is this little sign there. I was there with my friends who were born and raised in Chicago, and they had not even heard of that disaster, even though it happened right downtown Chicago. So why is that? Why is that nobody knows about this? 844 people lost their lives and nobody knows about it. Well, unlike Titanic, which already had the big hype going on, it was the longest, the fastest, the most luxurious, and she carried also all the rich and famous. The Eastland was exactly the opposite. It was not the fastest, not the longest, not the most luxurious, and she was supposed to carry, quote and unquote, only the West Electric employees. That's why people didn't talk about it, and all the employees who survived didn't want to talk about it, because that's what we do. If we have lived through some bad experience, we want to forget about it as quickly as possible so that we can move on. That's why not that many people, even in Chicago, know about what happened there on July 24th, 1915. So next time you go to Chicago, I strongly encourage you to visit the site and remember what happened that day. And next time you travel, also please make sure you know where your emergency exits are. Thank you very much for your attention.